One, two, three. Jim, they said we couldn't do it. It's the 12th episode of The Cruise. You put the news together with Craig and you get The Cruise, and here we are. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Who said we
What?
couldn't do 12 episodes, eh?
My-
Here we are.
My insecurities.
Oh, I was going to say, I didn't hear them.
What day is it? Where are we? It's 2020. I know that much.
It's Tuesday, the 16th of June, I believe.
Woo!
And this is the 12th episode of Cruise. Coming up on today's show.
What a summer.
Yes. Summer to remember.
Yes.
We've got everyone pointing fingers of blame at everyone else. Governments,
Sure.
airlines, the World Health Organization. We're going to be looking at some of the fact that the numbers may be lower, may be higher. We're going to be looking at Mike Tyson plans a 407-acre weed holiday resort.
Ow! I knew I liked that guy, and not just for the street crime.
We're going to be looking at the fact that Facebook might be peddling an addictive drug called anger. We're going to be backing up what I'm saying
What?
about...
When did they say that? Assholes! Fucking liars!
What we were saying last time about Giles being involved in Ferguson. I'll just give a couple of articles on that to quantify.
Oh, yeah.
In episode 11.
Yeah.
We're looking at a general trend for people moving away out of the big cities. And if we get time, we'll be going to be looking, people can look on our Facebook page or our YouTube video to see a little penguin taking a selfie of itself after finding a camera in Antarctica. So something for everyone here this week. Our first article, this is from Yahoo News. More than 100 countries are calling for an independent investigation into the coronavirus crisis. The two-day virtual World Health Assembly meeting has begun. More than 100 countries back a resolution calling for a probe into the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. A resolution at the annual assembly. Yeah, so just more or less repeating. And we were saying that. I mean, the World Health Organization was, it's not transmissible. Oh, yes, it is. Panic. Oh, you don't need to worry. Oh, yes, close down all the borders.
Sure.
Don't wear a mask. It's bad for you. Definitely wear a mask. You've got to. So the World Health Organization has...
Full contradiction.
All the way down the line. So it turns
now,
out...
do you fear like I do, Jim, on this? I just see a coalition of likely conspiring co-conspirators globally to basically cover their own arseholes. Personally, that's how I see it. Only because of the involvement, I believe, unless this is a different coalition that I'm not aware of, this is driven at least partly by the WHO themselves. So, you've got, I know some major players like Norway and Australia, and I forget maybe it's Switzerland's the third-party country that of all of the ones mentioned so far, and including the body that is the WHO, are the only wild card that maybe will have some veracity to what they're doing or talking about, because you can guarantee that Australia and Norway in cahoots with the WHO is just a mutual, we're talking soggy biscuit here, right? Like, these countries are not going to do anything to compete with each other's globally aspiring BS, of course. So I'm curious to see how it goes, but I'm just at that point, and I'm sure you're at as well, Jim. My optimism is entirely shot of, big moving bodies, especially ones that are well publicized, that are going to shake the halls of power, Jim. They're going to shake it down. It's just like, I'm going to go with that ain't going to happen. They're probably going to be in cahoots. And I'd say it's a team filleting exercise that just gets their, what do you call those, expense budgets. Well, they fly around the world. While we're locked in our basements, Jim, they're they get to fly around and set up little private residences in third world or developing nations and be armored cart around to their champagne parties. So that's again, I'm a cynic, but I hope that works out.
I agree with your sentiment. I'll just give you a little bit
Thanks.
more. I'll read a little bit more from the article to
Yeah.
maybe.
No, that's not what they meant, Craig.
No,
Turns
I
out.
agree with the sentiment. I just
Yeah.
thought I'd hope this article might be
Yeah.
able to answer the question you had originally, which is who it's
Yeah.
by and
Yes,
so
sure.
forth.
Great.
So, a a resolution at the annual assembly calls for an investigation into the global response coordinated by the WHO to the coronavirus crisis,
Mhm.
NBC News. A draft mentioning the need for an impartial, independent, and comprehensive evaluation of the response to COVID 19 is being supported by 116 countries out of 194. That
Mm.
includes
The
Australia,
rebels.
Britain, Russia, and members of the
Okay.
European Union.
At least there's some people who hate each other on the board. That's like a glimmer of hope. All right. Okay. Yeah,
The
or pretend to
European
in public
Union
anyway.
is presenting the resolution,
Oh,
which
Christ.
also mentions identifying the
Who
zoonotic
invited
source of the
Satan?
virus and the route of introduction to the human population. So there you go. I mean, they're still, let's ignore the Nobel Prize winners, let's
Yeah.
ignore common sense, let's ignore that it happened just down from a major biolab, let's ignore the biology professors. Let's identify that zoonotic source. The
Yeah.
reason maybe they don't.
It'd be great if they did.
Zoonotic source is
Yeah.
because there isn't one.
Yes,
Or
exactly. It'd be
bioweapons labs
wonderful
down
if they
the
did. I
road.
hope they
But,
do.
yeah.
I hope they do. I'm thinking that'd be a first.
Yeah,
That'd be
so,
amazing. Then we'd
I mean,
find out.
right there, it doesn't fill me with confidence because
No.
we've covered since episode 1 the amount of evidence that suggests that it's not a zoonotic source. And go and look at our previous podcasts. We're not making this up. We source and archive
Yeah.
all our stuff on our episodes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that doesn't exactly fill
And
me
as soon
with,
as the Aussies are involved, it's just tainted right across, right there. It's just like, just little Antipodean Johnny Lickboots. Just how can we? You got a war on? We'll be there as soon as possible. How can we get there quicker? Is there any way we can lick those boots? It's just, that's probably the worst Aussie accent you've ever heard, and I hope if you're hearing it, it bothers you a lot.
So just to continue for another laugh,
Sure.
the next paragraph says Chinese President Xi
Xing
Jinping,
Jinping, yeah.
in a remote speech at the assembly on Monday, claimed
Yeah.
the country has acted with openness and transparency during the crisis, saying an investigation should only
Just wait,
occur
just wait.
after the virus is under
Just wait.
control.
Did he, was it one of the, how long did he hang before the spit take, Jim? Can you imagine? Yes, with the utmost of transparency. Just like looking around the room at a communist politburo. Are we all going with that? Just everybody. Who's gonna hit the buzzer? I don't want to walk to the gulag. Just ridiculous, isn't it? The whole trying to maintain the artifice of openness, of even that style of governance, let alone like ours. We're not even forthcoming, Jim. We're not. It's not even our own governmental systems are, as we're finding, horribly infallible when it comes to being forthcoming or honest or truthful. When you got like the head of a communist party that really hasn't done much to change since like Mao massacre. What was it, 60 million on the Great Leap Forward? We leap forward off of a mountain of bodies. Woohoo! Like here we go. It hasn't really changed much since then, but yes, we've been extremely transparent in this regard. God.
Yeah, well, I should point out that article is almost a month old now. That was from May.
All right.
I can't believe that we missed it. But
So much has changed.
yeah. But, moving on to you talking about the credibility of the UK government. This one is
Oh no.
again. Just a couple of articles that we've missed. This is from the 20th of April. Government advisors, this is by MSN, lying to support regime with collapsing credibility, says Lancet editor. So again, another one I can't believe that we missed from like a couple of months ago. But medical advisors have been accused of lying to the British public about the coronavirus pandemic to prop up the government. Richard Horton, the editor of the medical journal The Lancet, criticised the government's advisors, accused them of telling manifest untruths. In a tweet posted on Sunday evening, he wrote, "When you see supposedly independent medical advisors to government tell what the manifest untruths to shore up a political regime whose credibility is rapidly collapsing, you have to say that those advisors has lost their integrity and our trust. So,
Yeah.
there's
What
another
does he
one
know,
that-
though, Jim? What does he know? What is it? Where is it? Is it some bum they found in a park? Who was that again?
the editor-
Oh, it's the editor of the Lancet. Oh, that's great. How do you spell Lancet anyway? What's that guy talking about? Jesus, how embarrassing. But a summation of how we all feel. To me, the sort of Confederates in our small circle, how we all feel that there's just there can be no credibility left. You're just left at the end of what did he say? What did he say? Manifest. What a wonderful way to say bald-faced lying. Manifest. Was it untruths? What was his? Just wonderfully subtle. There's.
Shall I say it again?
Yeah, please.
I'll read the whole tweet. When you see supposedly independent medical advisors to government tell what are manifest untruths
Yes.
to shore up a political regime whose credibility is rapidly collapsing, you have to say that those advisors have lost their integrity and our trust.
Yeah. And we went in tentative with the trust to begin with, right? We went in as adults with a fair handshake of like, okay, to whatever degree we can trust UK media's involvement in the election and the clear mandate to govern that the Tories produced for themselves, to ebb that away. But we're actually, I'd argue that among their power base, among their most fervent supporters, but I don't know if they've had much power ebbed away, because they're completely no. Boris was ill. We just believe it. We just believe that when somebody says that someone who's wholly untrustworthy on 1,000 different levels just says that they were ill and needed to be introduced to advanced medical care, to be put in the ICU unit, to be put in the that's where you're going to live or die, right, Jim? They don't put you somewhere else. Once they put you in the ICU from whatever little ward that you were like enjoying your flowers on the windowsill with, ICU just takes you to that next, like, there's home or the morgue, right? You don't have a lot of options there. But I didn't think that Boris was trustworthy prior to these little tests of our credibility, or their credibility with us, and then people like Whitty and Cummings repeatedly, and Hancock repeatedly. All these things, we all saw it. We're not all the editor of the Lancet. We all saw this happening. It's just utter horseshit. That's before you get into their movement of ill patients into the care homes. That's like, you see it written. Jim and I have seen this for months. It's national scandal. It's criminality. It's proposed as malfeasance in office. Like, you can't do much worse than killing the people who you're mandated to govern. There's really no higher crime that you can achieve than, hey, how do you guys do after that election? Well, we murdered tens of thousands of them knowingly. Just like, all right, that's very we're back to communist China.
Well, just to back up what you're saying there, you don't seem to be the only one with that opinion. This is bringing us up to date. This is the 12th of June. This is from ITV News. A woman from Sidmouth takes legal action against government over handling of COVID-19 in care homes.
Wow! Nice.
A woman from Sidmouth who lost her father to probable COVID-19 whilst he was in care home is launching a High Court proceedings to sue the government over his death. Dr. Kathy Gardner, a microbiologist with a PhD in virology, said goodbye to her 88-year-old father, Michael Gibson, through a care home window in early April.
Wow.
She says the government allowed patients to be sent back into their care homes after being in hospital with COVID-19 symptoms, branding it a national disgrace. So this isn't just a woman who's pissed off. This is a microbiologist with a PhD in virology. So this isn't just coming from an emotional perspective. This is a woman who knows
Yeah. Or a
how
maniac.
virology. Sorry?
Or a maniac. It's not just the maniacs. It's like level-headed, rational, learned people also have this. It's strange. I know it might be a fluke on my part, but sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it looks, when the government's trying to, paint this woman to be, oh, you're very upset about your father, don't get emotional. They're going to have problems saying, oh, well, you don't really know what you're talking about when it comes to COVID-19 because she's a microbiologist with a PhD in virology. I'd be interested
It's funny
to know
you
if
should
she
say
thought
that.
it was, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Pardon.
And I'll tell you what, it might be worth trying to reach out to see if she wants to come on the show.
I'd be curious. Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear what her court case has to say. I like people that do things. I like people that
Yeah.
don't just. We're step two. We just moan and gripe, and hopefully other people will take the ball on and do other stuff. But we're still better than doing nothing and just sitting around going, "Oh, that's terrible, isn't the government awful?" So we're just one step beyond standing in a queue, tutting, doing nothing. But this woman is way out doing
well.
Good
but she's
her.
Also lost her father. That's quite an incentive, isn't it? And lost her father under similarly to many others, as we've heard story after story after story of people who have a very unceremonious goodbye with people. Their loved ones. It's just hideous and gross. And that's before you get into all the hypocrisies of the permissible behaviors, that I think we've both seen, ad nauseum for months now. But, I saw some last night that were just a guy describing, and all these things, as we talked about before, maybe I'm reading bots, maybe I'm reading fabricated, to some degree. I'm sure some of the personalities online are, fabricated, but some of them are certainly authentic. And one of the ones I read last night was just a person talking about going to work in the new normal and being partitioned with plexiglass from workmates and any other persons at work, and he was tweeting that from being on the bus home. Just like, with people everywhere around him carrying shopping bags and, sneezing on his eyes and all the normal stuff. He's just like, and of course he summated the tweet with just, this is a farce. We're in a farce. It's ridiculous. You can't, you're vulnerable at your weakest link, not your most ridiculous, draconian implementation of the diktats of complete control freaks.
Yeah, she went on to add that she was determined to hold the government to account as a result. Her father had Alzheimer's and was a resident at Sherwood House Care Centre near Bicester, Oxfordshire. He died on Friday the 3rd of April after the care home accepted the return of a resident from hospital who had previously tested positive for COVID-19. Michael was not tested for the virus, but his recorded cause of death was probable COVID-19.
Boom!
Dr. Gardner told ITV,
"We've got another one!"
"I don't hold my father's care home responsible at all." She said she feels staff and managers there have been put in an impossible situation by the government, who have always maintained that they've been guided by the science.
Hideous. The exact opposite is true.
Dr. Gardner, who is the chair of East Devon District Council, it goes even worse for the government. She's the chair of a good. I really wish this woman all the best with her investigation. I really do.
She sounds competent without our help.
Yeah. Believes a lack of government testing may have led to his death. So there you go. Someone with known COVID, shove them in the care home.
Yep.
And people in the care home then die of COVID.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a microbiologist with a PhD in virology to know, Craig, that doesn't sound like a good idea.
No, and especially when pointedly the most vulnerable demographic of this, COVID-19 is an 88-year-old man with with already into extra years, extra innings, as they say over here. So you're basically kicking people into the grave, but knowingly doing so. And this is, this kind of plays against, I think, our politics all along the way. We would have been rounded on by people that are just saying, "Oh, you want to break lockdown? Well, I guess you just don't care if old people die." It's like, of course we do. Of course, nobody wants somebody to die prematurely, but now the government is doing that. And where's the outcry? Where are I find these things so frustrating, Jim, because it always leads me to, like, I already don't like them. I already don't like them for, like, for example, we could digress into criminalities in the Middle East, particularly Syria. They're war criminals. You're dealing with, like, lying war criminals who have already, like, conspired to fabricate acts of war on other countries. The highest crime, other than, like, murdering your own elderly knowingly in care homes, like, you're just dealing with, like, criminals, with abject criminals. And this is before you get into their business crap on the side. That's why their credibility is shot. Even the editor of the Lancet mentioning, but most of the credibility of the secondary actors being shot has an underlying tone of their complicity in their businesses with Mr. Gates. So there's, like, all kinds of subterfuge that's not even addressed or dealt with, or that are major reasons to A, not trust, and B, not cooperate with a government who is imposing on its people step by step criminal actions.
Yeah, so this is in April, so this is after the lockdown. So it's not like the government knew, they didn't know how bad this was. I mean, we were in our homes for what, a week or two at that point. So they obviously knew this was serious.
And they knew from Italy. They knew from Italy, of course, the demographic that was most hit, the average age of deaths. Sorry to interrupt.
I'm just, it's Britain is so, well, the world is so divided among so many different lines. There are those that are going to be saying, "Oh, the numbers are, it's a hoax, the numbers are high." There are going to be those that are saying, "Oh, the government's lying, the numbers are way higher than they are." There are those that are going to be saying, "Oh, it's way lower than they are," and that they're hyping up the numbers. And there are even going to be, the division goes along so many different lines as well. There are going to be, sadly, those that are going to go, "Oh, I've heard some horrible things like, oh, what do we care if that age group grows? That was the ones that voted for Brexit anyway," and all that.
Oh, yes. Stuff. Yeah, that's hideous.
Sort of
I've seen some of that politics. Yes, nasty.
And there's going to be other groups of people that are going to go, we don't care about old white males, and criticise us for... They would even say that, that we're living in a mad world now where the division is so bad that people can find an excuse to have a problem with another human being of whatever race, colour, creed or religion or sexual orientation.
And feel comfortable expressing it.
Yeah, it's sad, really, but we all need to unite and say it all around the world and go, I think our respective governments handled this negligently, and possibility.
Yes.
There is a possibility that it
negligently. Yes, absolutely. But I will give those mean people that you mentioned that relished the age category of highest deaths being predominantly Tory voters. I mean, there's an irony that not only is the Johnson government liquidating its elderly, and some argue even more cynically their drain on resources of the NHS. They're not money makers for the NHS, but there is an irony that he's also in a higher percentage, probably arguably, getting rid of his voting base, which is just like a real wrench in the works to kind of figure in your political strategy mind of, like, it's almost Night of the Long Knives. Thanks for voting us in, and then taking advantage of a crisis to to get rid of at least a higher percentage of his voting base. It's weird to say the least, Jim.
Perhaps they probably looked at Labour and thought, nah, we don't really think the British working class are going to go and get behind a knighted lawyer. We can lose a few percentage points here and there. You know, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
But
You
who
got to
knows
remove
about-
your soul and then tinker.
yeah. But that's sort of a semi-joke, knowing that this is a very morbid subject, and a lot of people have lost
Sure.
their loved ones and everything like that. But that's what we're trying to do here on the cruise: bring attention to articles that might not
Yeah.
get enough attention. Because
And
bringing
if this
Yeah.
doesn't work out for us, Jim, we can apply for a job on one of Bill Gates's death panels.
well,
Our
put in a word
skills,
in for me.
our skills
Yeah.
of sifting through morbidity with a straight face. What are you guys good at? We're fairly unflappable. Why? What do you need help with? We're deciding who gets some attention and who dies. Great. Welcome aboard. Grab a donut. Coffee's free.
Can you hear that music on your end? No, that's just my earphones. I've just opened my-
Oh no! Oh no!
I've got the
I
earphones
immediately
in.
thought, oh my God, Jim's got Alzheimer's. Holy shit! Here you go, Jim. For
Drama.
yes. Do you remember anything odd about Jim? Yeah, he used to complain about music that I couldn't hear during the show, and then well, that was about 15 episodes ago, before the incident downtown, as we can now refer to it. Or Jim just dancing at the Tesco checkout. Right. You can't hear that? Because it's not happening for anyone else, Jim. What is it? Did you figure it out?
They haven't invited you.
Whoop, bam, luma, whoop, bam, boom. What tune was it?
Clear what happened there? I just opened an article in the
Autoplay.
And this is the first episode on our cruise that
Yeah.
we're using a microphone and earphones. We're really trying to take
Yeah.
the sound level to the next level, and what I've been to the next level is
Yeah.
what everyone else kind of has.
Yes, totally. And we're only hoping that this works. We haven't
Yeah.
really done a run through, but yes, but we're hoping to give you cleaner sound with our current setup. So don't be thrown by the cans.
So our next article. So the UK government and all the other governments blame the World Health Organization. The Lancet blames the UK government, and the UK government is, or at least MPs, are blaming are taking a pop at British Airways. So British
Oh,
Airways'
yes.
response to coronavirus crisis, a national disgrace, say MPs. And this is from 3 days ago. This is by Simon Calder, the travel correspondent for The Independent. This wanton destruction of a loyal workforce cannot appear to go without sanction, said Hugh Merriman, chairman of the Transport Select Committee. British Airways has been branded a national disgrace by MPs because of its response to the seaboard crisis. A new report from the Transport Select Committee accuses the airline of taking advantage of the pandemic to cut jobs and weaken the terms and conditions of its remaining employees. The report says the behaviour of British Airways and its parent company towards its employees is a national disgrace. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Well, it's sad, isn't it? Because the individual componentry of the attack the ball, not the man sort of thing. I think in some of these disputes, because I always have and I watch this as well, Jim, for other people's critical eye on their national carrier. I've always been I may even have mentioned to you, a huge advocate of British Airways, but that's of course not an advocate of their managerial decisions like we're discussing here. So I make pains to say that in the main, on the whole, my experience with the individual components of British Airways over decades has been, I'd argue, close to exemplary. And maybe this is coming from, in Canada, we've got something called Air Canada. And it's kind of, it's comedically, I won't even go into how cliche it is, to eviscerate essentially a communist entity in the sky that has benefited from many federal decisions to take away any viable competition. So it keeps the prices high. It's basically being like a national, in some ways, and I say this, some camps wouldn't agree with me, Jim, but in some other camps, my own included, a national disgrace. So, for me to run into BA, I was just kind of early days, really, just shocked at great service. And most people don't know. And this is when I listen to you speak of that article, it saddens me in a way, because I also know that next to Virgin, which I think is still considered to a degree in the industry, at least an incremental step down, the actual reputation and respect for the British Airways pilots is next to certain, maybe competitive with Qantas. Maybe in the Lufthansa, there's, kind of the major carriers have their echelons. And BA is definitely from like day dot, basically from the Battle of Britain to our conversation right now. BA has had a beyond exemplary reputation from a piloting point of view. So it's saddening to hear such a great airline on so many different levels, arguably, it can't be held responsible for the behavior at Heathrow, which some of our viewers might not realize is nicknamed Thiefbro. It's like that's a bit of a free-for-all as far as anything's concerned. But BA itself, the individual people involved, which sadly your article, those are the people being hurt by their management structure. So it just seems not surprising to me in current climate that, and we talked about this on a governmental global level as well. I saw this from day dot and from months ago when we were first angst about this, Jim, when we were first worried about what was going to happen if they shut down the economy, if they destroy the world economy. What we're seeing right now on just that tiny incremental article on one aspect of a massive international airline industry, this is what we're going to see. Everyone in the strata that has any power at all, especially economically, they are going to wield it in a brutal and uncompromising fashion because they have the impetus now. They, what was that great British quote on the attacks of 9/11? It's a good time to bury bad news, sir. And that's where we're at. That they're just now, unfortunately, in the confetti shower of horror stories globally. And I say this also, Jim, that's why I say incrementally, it also goes to governments, because everywhere in the world, every government is going to take advantage of everyone else having their emotional state already usurped by other tragedies, by other issues everywhere. And the very worst is going to rise to the top in those kind of conditions, right? That's when you want to drag people behind the barn. And what happened? When was that? I don't know. There was a lot going on. It's just we're in the rise of fascism, Jim. And that's just business fascism, what you've seen there. Hurting people's lives, hurting the the employees of a well-respected company, hurting their lives personally. It's sad.
Well, got a more light-hearted article coming up now. This is from
Jim, I got to say, because on the end of that, I have to say this, because these are all from personal anecdotes, but I had this one time, and you can appreciate this, I think you'll enjoy this, I hope you will, just if you can imagine what it was like, even though I'd experienced Toronto and quite a bit of Canada before I came to the UK, Jim, I wasn't like most people, I guess, first day or first week or first year tourists. I couldn't piece together how mammoth London was. I couldn't even, when you look at the tube map, and you see all the different stations. You mistakenly, as I had in this story, I overlaid other metros that I was familiar with, Jim, right? Like I just thought, there'll be the same sort of time or distance between the stations as other places I've been in the world, right? And then suddenly there you are, as happened, on your way to Heathrow with your stupid backpack on the Piccadilly line, because the Piccadilly goes all the way to Heathrow. So you get on that one and just think, how long can it take, Jim, from central London? How long might it take to get to Heathrow on the Piccadilly? Like, I don't know, 25 minutes, 15 minutes or something? I don't know. It's just like, fuck me. Like, an hour and 45 later and you're in Ealing, stopped for a while. And it obviously you're starting by that time to start to interpret that, like, the system doesn't appear to be in a rush much, right? You start to get that sense of like, this thing's pretty inefficient. And I was the complete dickhead as well, Jim, because I've learned now, and again, I think anybody, if you can take this as a window into, if you ever decide to come to the UK or come to London, the me that these types of stories created would have a pen, a pencil, a credit card, a debit card, cash, change, like, not just a pen, but a pencil. Like, if you think you might need something, you better bring it, because nobody's going to help you. You are now essentially, you're in the jungle, right? So I learned this from these types of situations where now the train was quite obviously a bit late, but what did I do, Jim? What was I not doing? I, of course, wasn't wearing a watch. I didn't know what time it was exactly. So I had to, without like being too annoyed and anxious, because I was like clearly in a rush to get to the airport because I was late for the flight. And I'm just like, holy, so I'm asking people all, hey, sorry to bother you again. I know I asked you a couple of minutes ago. What time is it now, though? It's like, it's 2:42. I'm like, just like, just realizing that, suddenly we stop, Jim, at like there's like 3 or 4 of the last stations when you're getting to Heathrow. And I'm talking like at this point now, it's getting close to, like, maybe in my head I'm thinking maybe the plane's delayed, maybe the flight's delayed, maybe I'll have some fucking chance. Holy shit! And I'm just like tense of ready to. I'm like planning my steps, Jim. As soon as the doors open, I'm gonna run, straight immediately. I've walked down the car to get to the closer door to where I think the stairs are gonna be. Right, like I'm just in full holy shit. And you know what it's like when you're just like, you're gonna miss a flight, man. It's that's a new addition in my life. I'm used to being early, and suddenly, like, now it's like close to the flight time. And it got to one of those like second or third, like Hatton Cross, I think it is, middle of fucking nowhere, of the like the top end of the Piccadilly, close to Heathrow line, and I got to the point, Jim, I did this silly. I stopped looking directly at the place names or at the station names, and I just started in my head, Jim, just to like occupy anxious time. I started to count down the stations, Jim. I started to count down like 4, 3, 2, and it stopped. And I don't know, Jim, I don't know to this day how I miscalculated. I fucking don't know how this happened. But like, I just, from numbers in my head and not looking at the actual station names, Jim, I thought, this is fucking Heathrow Airport, my friend. And I like ran out of the tube and like got in the kind of, low scrum to figure out where the exit, stairs are. And then just hideously, Jim, just like kind of, opened my eyes to what was right in front of me. And I just started like scanning through the plexiglass, and I could see for sure it wasn't an airport, Jim. Oh my fucking Christ. I just had like kind of a little stutter, and then like thought, this can't be. From what I'm looking at right here, this isn't an airport, it's not Heathrow. And Jim, of course, what happens? I spin around, big fucking pack on, and like just start to go towards my own train, Jim. And it fucking closed. The doors just closed in time and left me on the train track on the station, Jim, just shy of the airport. And now the fucking train I was on just heads off, probably to make the fucking flight I was going for. And then it was just like, next train from blah blah Cockfosters, 15 minutes type thing, Jim. It was unreal. It was like, and then another one came, but it wasn't going to Heathrow, right? Like fucking came, but like, don't get on this one. I was just like, no, holy. And then fucking finally, like 15 minutes later, I get on this train, Jim. I'll never forget this as long as I live. I fucking like, it was, maybe 2 more stops. I don't know how I miscalculated the first time, but like 2-3 stops later, same, almost exact same thing, where I've got to the right door, and I just fucking, the door's open, and I run out, and I just started to pick up, flights, arrivals, departures, and I just like running, and it's, you know what Heathrow's like, where it's just every time you're running down a long corridor, and then you just turn that next corner, and it's just another long corridor as long as you can fucking look and see, right? It's just like, oh my God. And Jim, I'm like running with his backpack on, just like aimlessly running, like just, like Rocky, just like, and I fucking went from the Finding Departure arrows to BA. BA came out of nowhere, Jim. BA came out of fucking nowhere, and I was just like running to BA. And I fucking ran, and a lady caught me, Jim, which is even more wonderful in the story. Like, I didn't even have to get to their desk. There was just like, you remember the pillbox hat and, the nice, the setup, the BA lady. And she just like, how can I help you, sir? Like, I'm just like, like I could see she was BA, and I have my ticket in my hand, and she just, I'll take this to my grave, Jim. It was beautiful. She looked at it and she said, you can definitely relax because you've definitely missed your flight. And I was just like, oh. And she sent me over to the little, information desk, the next little BA lady, Jim. To this day, I don't know how, and I forget to tell you that the reason there was so much tension here is because I had bought that ticket in Thailand at a little, travel agent the old days, sat down in Bangkok, and it had pointedly, Jim, I'd never seen anything like it prior to that in my travels. It had like several different official stamps on the ticket that was just like non-refundable, non-changeable, just you're done. Like, for this is like you bought this and it, and there's no receipt. Good luck. And so I had this to this second BA lady, and she just, I'll never forget this, Jim. It was amazing. She just like looked at the ticket, and she did a little ticker on the computer, and she said, "Would you like to go to Montreal, Toronto, or Vancouver?" And I was still breathing hard and stunned, and I was just like, I knew, like, from Montreal, Jim, to Vancouver is as far as Montreal to fucking Heathrow, right? Like, it's like, and I was going to Toronto, which is only an hour past Montreal. So she essentially, out of nowhere, from me missing a flight with a non-refundable, like, forget it ticket, bought with cash in a third world country, she just said, would you? And I was like, I could really like use being in the air for an extra 4.5 hours and going to Vancouver. Actually, that would be like way better for my personal life. And it's just like, just a little scratch there with the old ball pen, ballpoint pen, and okay, to Vancouver. And then the flight, Jim, it was like 4 hours later or something like that, they gave me access to a lounge. I had a shower. I did laundry, Jim Grant. I did laundry in a like a little loungy area, and I just like wasn't asked a dime extra. Nobody said £100 surcharge or any of that. I just went from like a panicked, an idiot, not well prepared world traveler to just, wow, BA is awesome. It's an awesome airline. How do people, and imagine like over the years, Jim, honestly, I've purchased tickets from BA because of that experience like dozens of times. For sure, like I would have in the past and up till now paid extra just because they've treated me. Just that goes a billion miles to treat people like that. So to hear that those kind of people, outside of the reputation of the pilots are being treated that way in a crisis by their own management, it's just like it's a crime against people, Jim. It's a crime against people, and it's another crime that'll trickle down to you and I, because that's less people going to the pub, and it's less people having, a show, money to go watch something. It's destroying the power base of an economy and a country, which is its people. It's such a shame.
Yep, and if there's anyone from the BA workforce watching, Mr. Campbell is available to do your Christmas corporate.
If you like the word cunt. Which is probably a deal breaker.
I imagine they'll want you to use it quite a great deal.
Yeah. Could you use it gratuitously?
Yeah. In relation to our chief executive and board. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Appropriately.
So, our next article, this is from the 11th of June. This is by the Sport Bible. Mike Tyson is training for a return to boxing, but his plans to create a 407-acre weed resort could be what sets him up for life. In 2016, the former heavyweight champion set up his own company, Tyson Holistic Holdings, through which he sells an array of cannabis-based products and merchandise. It's believed that Tyson Holistic Holdings makes the baddest man on the planet around $500,000 per month. The following year, Tyson Ranch was developed. However, it is not yet fully built. He hopes that when it is complete, the 407-acre site in Southern California will be home to a whole host of tourism attractions, including a huge lazy river and the Kind Music Festival, which he and his business partner Rob Hickman described as the Lollapalooza of cannabis. The first Kind Music Festival has already been held on the site. In fact, back in February, the fest gives people the chance to enjoy marijuana, listen to music, and learn about the health benefits of the drug. I'm wondering if it's anything like Britain, when you hold a festival, you have to prove that you've got adequate security. I wonder if Mike Tyson turned up.
Send them to me.
People. They've said, and what are you going to do for security? And he just says, I'm Mike fucking Tyson. Yeah. And they just, that'll do.
If they really bother me, I'll bite their ear off.
Yeah.
And remember, only half of that money is going to Robin Givens. So that's, that's some...
There's an 80s reference for you.
Yes, goodness me. Well, good for Mike. That's nice to see him back on his feet. In fact, that's pretty awesome. I love it. I love it when people describe, what do you say, 407-acre site for the festival or whatever. It reminds me of my family's like that. My sister's like that in Canada, where they're just it's something. Well, maybe it's just certain Brits aren't keyed into it, but just talking about like space in terms of my family, my sister does it in terms of like square footage in the house, for example. And I just like, Jim, I know what a square foot is to eyeball, but if you told me that it was like a 2,700 square foot upper balcony or whatever, I just okay, how many tables does that seat, or like I don't have that, and for for someone like Mike now talking to an audience of high festival goers, like how many of them can picture 407 acres? Well, that's a nice selling point. It's just like, what the hell? Are we raising corn, or do you have an image in your head? What do you have an image that comes to you when you think of like 407 acres?
Well, there's actually pictures on
There we are. From space.
So, all our sources, as ever, will be on our Facebook page and our YouTube video, either in the description in our comments somewhere, so you can see it for yourself.
Yes,
it
exactly.
Looks really nice. Tyson went on to say, I thought about how much good I could do by helping people with cannabis. It was a no-brainer. I've been fighting for over 20 years, and my body has a lot of wear and tear. I had 2 surgeries, and I used marijuana to calm my nerves, and it would take the pain away. But before, they had me on opiates, and those opiates had me all screwed up.
Yes. How awesome. Well done, Mike.
And there's a video of him back in training, and he looks, at 53 years old, he looks ripped and awesome. And
yes, I did see some of him sparring recently, and he doesn't look a day over 15. He's just like, whoa, fast and powerful as always. But that's just great to hear, and not many people, know, but certainly he'll be helping with the advancements in cannabis in terms of pharmacologically, particularly. They expect, Jim, fully, they expect it to replace opiates wonderfully. And I'll give you a tiny bit of an insight. You probably remember that I went to go do some shows with my comedy partner, Mr. Sean Collins, down in British Columbia in September, which we filmed about 12 of our shows in Spit and Sawdust venues. But the side attraction, aside from fishing in what we were doing there, Jim, was going to visit some of the main dispensaries. Some of the ones that have become, some legal since Canada's legalization of cannabis for both recreational and medicinal. And what was wicked about all of them, the different ones that we went into, because there's, various sort of levels of them, what was really, really curious, and each of the proprietors were incredulous in finding out for themselves, Jim, how wild is it? Weed becomes legal. Suddenly, you're selling it from shops on high streets, and, some are on native reservations and all these kinds of places. But what do they all find that's ubiquitous to all of their businesses? Old people, Jim. They were blown away to find out how many elderly people were both curious and hungry for the cannabis business. And why? Of course, because just like what you've read that Mike said, it takes them off of what they're already being prescribed. And some of those prescriptions are very, very detrimental, and people know it. So suddenly, it doesn't mean that all of them are cured, and it doesn't mean that all of them got rid of all of their previous medications, but a lot of them are feeling a benefit enough that they're coming in and having marijuana at least augment what they're already doing for their own health. So, and in some of them, being some of the illegal dispensaries, I'll tell you also that I spoke with some of those proprietors, and they relayed to me that they felt those were some of the reasons why they weren't being shut down by the government, or weren't being focused on by law enforcement, because they knew that there was enough of a business. What's the word I'm looking for? Not cartel, but what do you call it when you have your people that you sell to, your clientele. Yeah. Enough of their clientele was like, older members of society, and the cops don't want any heat from them, so they keep their candy store open. It was quite a warming bit to hear. That's just like, yeah, that's the perception of who's going to be your main customers was really shaken.
Before we read out the next article, just tell us what that show is.
Sorry, Jake. We're viewing the pilot tomorrow. We were going to do it today, overlapping our timing here, but we're looking at it tomorrow, and then we'll give more information on when we expect to air it, of course. But it was an amazing time, and I just have to say before I forget, because I was having a little laugh. I was thinking, imagine Mike Tyson's arthritis. Holy crap! Can you imagine just all the joints from impacts? If you know anything about arthritis, particularly secondary arthritis from injury, and every punch with somebody of that strength and capability, every punch is like a micro tear, right? Like every punch is going to be a joint impact. And I can only imagine Mike likes to get the huff on and turn his niggles into tickles. That's funny. Sorry to interrupt.
I just wanted to ask, do you know what platform it's going to go out on, what channel?
No, but we know the main ones that we're shopping towards, because obviously it's two yahoos telling jokes which are pretty off color. See recommendations from the BA Christmas party, and we're fishing. So who likes fishing? Not many people. We know that. And we're visiting weed dispensaries and getting ripped all the time. So who likes that? Particular types of people, but not a lot. So we're pretty niche, but we're, as you can imagine, we're happily niche. And yeah.
Well, before that gets broadcast,
Yeah.
you've got an air date and you know where it's
Yeah.
going out and everything like that. Because it's all been filmed now, hasn't it?
Yeah, we might be able to do our first advertisements. Oh yeah, it's all in the can. We were really lucky with with how things have gone with this horrible lockdown. For you and I both know in our creative industry to have a project that was right on the cusp of release at the time that we had done it prior to just before Christmas, to have something that we were able to work on the edit of throughout this just brain tumor of an experience for all of us globally. We're feeling very fortunate. So we can't wait to release it, just to give people some idea of, remember what it was like. Remember when you didn't get, remember when you were hugging strangers at the airport? Remember before this shit hit the fan. It's just yeah. I can't wait to see it
before it goes out on whatever medium it's going out on.
Yeah.
Perhaps we can get Sean on the show and both of
Oh,
us
that'd be cool.
discuss the show for about half an hour.
Yes, that'd be totally awesome. I hadn't even thought of that. That'd be totally wicked.
Preview to our audience first of what's going to be going out on the airwaves.
With great pleasure. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, our next article is from the Telegraph, and I can only read the top line because I'm not subscribed to the Telegraph.
Yeah.
So this is by Jack Hardy at the Telegraph. Professor Carol Sikora, and they say COVID-19 death toll may be less than half of what has been recorded. In a conversation with the Telegraph's Planet Normal podcast, oncologist says medics can too easily put COVID on death certificates. And that was something we said in our earlier broadcast.
In this broadcast,
yeah. So, so
88-year-old Alzheimer's. Oh, COVID.
Yeah. It's
what's the average death age in the UK for a man? I think 81, maybe 81, maybe 82. Like you just once you're at that age, you shouldn't be put in high risk. Is certainly epidemiologically conditions. It's just like. It's a no-brainer, right? They're the most sensitive of that category. I don't even want to digress into it again, Jim. It's just horrible. But we've seen that in our own investigations.
Just a little story from years ago about the control of information in these times, about how important it is.
Yeah.
There's an article in the New York Times, but I can't subscribe into it. It's actually an 11-year-old article. If people want to do it. Amazon erases Orwell books from Kindle devices. I saw that doing the rounds on social media recently. I wanted to point out that article was actually 11 years old. So, and just another little bit of historical context of controlling information to show that this is not a new phenomenon of what we've seen recently. It's just been taken to a new level. This is not a new phenomenon. It's just a phenomenon taken to
on roids.
Another level. Yeah,
it's just hopped up on roids now.
Article to load up here, but the article that hopefully will be loading in a minute is actually from 2013 in November, and it is from the Guardian, and it's just loading now. Yep.
I was going to say the Telegraph's really come about on the COVID hasn't it? It's almost you have to be suspicious of it in terms of how on the mark they've been from your last article.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are
sorry.
you in relation to the fact that they've been traditionally a conservative party
Yeah.
supporting
Yes.
people
Exactly. Yeah.
in?
Yeah. Yeah. Sort of
No,
faithfully. Yeah. Yeah. Now
yeah,
they're just
they've had some good works. We've been reading out quite a bit of the stuff recently.
maybe they're more partial
Ramdeck,
to scientists.
maybe, or
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
some of the reporters had elderly in those care homes that they sent the
Yeah.
papers to. Who,
Yes. Yeah. 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 I hadn't thought of that.
there are
Yeah.
different tests of logic,
Yeah.
but I'm
Yeah.
purely speculating.
Yeah.
I
Sure.
know
Sure. Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I know nothing. We
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
nothing.
Nothing.
So Ramesh and Alex Hearn. This
Yeah.
is from Wednesday, the 13th of November, 2013. So almost 7 years old now.
Yeah.
Conservative Party
Those were the
deletes
days.
archive of speeches from internet. Decades worth of records is erased, including PM speech praising internet for making more information available. So I just wanted to point out that those the information of control exercise has been going on for quite some time, and that I've seen a few people share those articles recently, and they may not be aware that they're quite. And there's another article that I haven't brought up, which people were saying recently about
Yeah.
that people always get very frightened, and I can understand the fear. It says Hancock, we are seriously considering vaccination as mandatory.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
article is from September of 2019, and he's talking about it only in schools. It's not a.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah, so I
right.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
wanted
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
that doing the rounds.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that article does the rounds
Right.
every sort of month or so, and
Wow.
people go,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
just wanted to
And that's
point
not
out
what it's
that-
in reference to.
Yeah.
Current. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah.
Our next article is from CNBC. This is a modern one. This is only 4 days old. This is from June the 12th by Vicky McKeever at CNBC. Joanna Hoffman, the former right-hand woman of Steve Jobs, says Facebook is peddling in an addictive drug called anger. Joined Apple in 1980 and later worked at its spin-off technology company, General Magic. She said she found technology leaders today to be remarkably ignorant. Once a close advisor to the late Apple CEO Steve Jobs has criticized leadership at Facebook for not being accountable for some of the harmful effects the social media platform has had on society. Hoffman was responding to a question at the 2020 CogX conference on Tuesday about the cult of leadership in the technology industry and how people can decouple ego from their work. As I look at Facebook, for example, I keep thinking, are they really that ignorant, or is this motivated by something darker than what appears, she said in a panel with former colleagues of Apple's offshoot technology company, General Magic. While Hoffman said she had enormous respect for what Facebook had achieved, she suggested certain aspects of the social media giant were destroying the very fabric of democracy, destroying the very fabric of human relationships, and peddling in an addictive drug called anger. You know, it's just like tobacco. It's no different than the opioids, she added. We know anger is addictive. We know we can attract people to our platform and get engagement if we get them pissed off enough. So therefore, what? We should capitalize on that each and every time. A spokesman for Facebook wasn't immediately available to comment and contacted by CNBC.
Did they try and contact him on Messenger? Still not there. Huh? It's but that's old news, also, isn't it? To a degree, the adjectives have changed. Moved a couple of nouns around, but the actual accusation of dealing in emotional state as a commodity in in social media, particularly in tech giants and Silicon Valley tech giants, particularly. I think it was a few years ago now that there were employees quitting, designer employees quitting for moral and ethical reasons, Jim Grant, for exactly the same things that we're hearing here, but more so for the proven addictive qualities of the different implementations for particularly again social media. So the known addictiveness of the like button, for example, had several defectors on the board that designed it, and I think we might have spoken about this also because imagine how wild things are going to get when that becomes monetized, when there's actually a gambling element of whether or not you show your appreciation for somebody else's post, that you're also throwing them a Bitcoin, infinitesimal half a billionth of a penny. So not only is it a thumbs up, but it actually chucks a penny in the pot if they get 1,000 of them. So that now you're going to have a different type of incentive, financial, but that people are being motivated by their emotional state doesn't surprise me, and especially I'm funny with anger. Obviously, I spend a lot of time on social media, and I'm livid the entire time. I can totally relate. Like if that's the drug that they're peddling in, it wouldn't shock me because I'm one of the main givers and receivers of that. But I do, because I guess maybe you and I may be more analytical about that which is that we know we're being targeted essentially, and I feel that also. So I try and mitigate any anger that I have by delaying when I respond to people who are making me angry or presenting information that raises anger in me. So I don't know if you're the same way, but I do my best. You seem very level-headed on social media. We've talked about that before, so it wouldn't shock me if you're similar. You don't seem to be somebody who lashes out in the spur of the moment. I think that's pretty important to not do. I try and be a little more thought out in my expressions of disapproval.
Well, the libertarian in me says we're all equal, so why should I think anyone cares what I think? And unless someone I respect or trust or value it has proven themselves in the past, I'm not particularly bothered what anyone else thinks. But that comes through comedy as well, really. You find in these
thick skin.
like you, some people like you, some people don't, and I'm fine with both. Because I respect everyone's right to think whatever they want. And if someone doesn't like what I say, they should have the right to slag it off, and I should then have the right to slag it off back. But I tend not to bother because they don't have any power over me. So why should I be concerned what they think? But the tip side of that is you mustn't be arrogant and think I'm great. I mustn't take on board what anyone else has said. So I just prefer a small circle of people that I trust. Yeah. And if one of them says I've gone too far or that, then I'll listen to that because I respect these people. But other than that, I'll do what I want and let others do what they want. And, I'm not harming anyone. So
grow my strawberries, grow my potatoes. You had to huddle. Say la vie.
I think that's an hour now. So
we're pretty damn close.
Wrap up with a few.
What do we got? Take us home.
Blitz these quickly. Yeah, just to blitz these quickly. This is what's I was quantifying what I was saying last episode in 11. This is from the Washington Times, and this is dated 2015. And it's one of the ones that's got a little bit of problems scrolling. A little bit of delay. So here we are, the Washington Times. George Soros funds Ferguson protests, hopes to spur civil action. Liberal billionaire, I love the word liberal. yeah. He's the one that was a Nazi collaborator in Germany. Very liberal. Liberal billionaire gave at least 33 million in one
youth
year.
Nazi.
I don't know. Maybe another episode. Liberal billionaire gave at least $33 million in 1 year to groups that emboldened activists. And here's that from another point of view. This is from the Mail Online. Billionaire George Soros spent 33 million bankrolling Ferguson demonstrators to create echo chamber and drive national protest. Hedge fund moguls Open Society Foundations made huge donations. Organisers bust in from New York and DC to take over campaigning. Different cash recipients would repeat each other's messages, help to keep events and messages at the top of news agenda. Soros cash from speculating on markets is given to many, quote, liberal causes. Yeah. And just to quantify that with something from Snopes, this is why I really don't have much respect for this. Listen to the fact check on that. Read out those articles.
Great.
I wanted to read them out from two different sources.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Before I read out
the rebuttal.
And I would say that Washington Times and the Daily Mail were reasonably varied ends of the political spectrum, I would say. So
you think?
So this is,
I think they're probably. I think they probably both. They're probably closer to parallel than we in an American British sense. Yeah. To
No, perhaps I'll try and dig out something next time from the Guardian or something.
Yeah,
like
they tend to be. The Times tend to be. I find that they'll report on things that others. I think we've discussed this before, where you'll find that there's two sets of truth, but they're not disputed by the different periodicals. They're just reported by one group, but not by the other. Like something that New York Times, CNN, Guardian wouldn't touch with a barge pole. The Mail and the Washington Times would. But similarly, there are obviously Chinese influenced left wing Soros causes that the others won't report upon. It's like it's what we're seeing in front of us right now. Two paradigms running parallel to each other, and then sometimes, as in the States, has been conflicting, biker gangs and Antifa protesters. There's these two great powers surging through general society right now, being financed by huge powers and being violent when they meet on the street. So as we saw in London this last Saturday, didn't we? So fuck, Jim, it's just like they each group's got their own set of news, and the only time that they get to meet up and talk is when they're going to protest together. It's just like, ooh.
So this is Snopes' take on it. Did George Soros fund Ferguson protests and Black Lives Matter? So they've.
What's next?
This is the claim. George Soros donated 30
Partly
million
true.
to fund rioting Ferguson protest groups. The rating is mixed.
Partly, I knew it.
What's true?
He gave them the money. He just didn't know what they were going to do with it.
It's funny you mentioned that.
No,
that's
God.
Exactly
Didn't know they were going to buy a tank. Come on. That's perfect.
A grant-making network founded by George Soros provided funding to some groups that engaged in Ferguson-related protest activities. What's false? George Soros did not give money to various groups for the express purpose of promoting Ferguson-related.
Of course. He gave it to them for parades and, bunting. Lots of bunting. It was
around this time I stopped really having any interest in Snopes.
It's still funny, though. It was worth the investment of reading it.
Yeah.
We get a giggle. We're a bit cynical.
So, a nice little article to end with tonight.
Wherever you're watching us from.
Yeah, so please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. And before I read out our final article, our shouts out here from episode 11. Martina, she says, hilarious. This is about episode 11, resonating with things that I have always been saying since the start of the pandemic. When the truth's finally out, I can't wait to see those four little words.
Bold comment.
To say those four little words, I told you so. Cold's Law, and there's a little laugh icon.
Ah,
Thank goodness that was your joke, wasn't it? And,
Yes.
and thank goodness they remembered.
I'm proud
it
of
was
that
a
one, Jim.
stroke with the broom and not poke. So that's of course reference to
Yeah, the
eccentric
Aussie,
Bex Wong.
yeah. All right,
Thanks for
all
another
right.
great show. And also
Nice,
we've had a
that's nice.
comment from Chris. Thanks for the mention and kind words. Keep up the good work, you fine
yeah.
beast. I
Yes.
assume he's talking to you, not me.
Yeah.
So
Wonderful.
Speaking of
It's very nice of him
fine
to say.
beasts, this is our little feel-good article to end with here tonight. Ever want to know what happened when penguins get hold of a camera in Antarctica and accidentally take selfies? Well, you can go and look on our cruise Facebook page or the comments section.
They are great.
Looking this on, and
I
you
saw
can
some
go
of
and
those.
see some penguins take accidental selfies.
They look unreal, don't they? They look surreal. They don't at all. You'd never guess, I don't think, without the caption. You wouldn't know. I wouldn't have known right away that it was a penguin. I double taked and triple taked, just thinking, really? Just it's such
Really?
totally, yeah, such a wild angle, and they're just, as you know, as a bird, they're just so precise. There's such precision to their affectations, their colors particularly, and their shapes. They just don't, from the angle that the cameras, that they've chosen to take their selfies from, they're very hard to identify immediately. But yeah, totally cool.
So that's been episode 12 of The Cruise. Hopefully you're watching this Facebook Thursday 6 p.m. or YouTube about 9 p.m. Those are UK times.
Yeah.
So that's what we're hoping to go out. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for clicking play, whatever time you decided to press that button. And any closing comments, Mr. Campbell?
No, just thanks a ton, and fingers crossed that we're hearing better news out of particularly Spain has said that they will be under certain conditions accepting British tourists, and things are opening up to a degree. There's been some comparisons made to the cafes in Paris buzzing again. It's not far. We have hope and faith that our worlds will get back to closer to normal than they have been for quite some time, and we hope that for you, for yourselves, and thanks for watching our show.
And we at Cruise will forever remain abnormal with your
Yes,
support.
for your benefit.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Cheers.
Bye.